What's up, everybody? I'm Adam. You're watching the Model Aviator channel. In today's quick look demo episode, we'll be checking out the new Dynam E-2C Hawkeye. I've got a little bit of experience with Dynam airplanes, but it's been about 12 years. Back then, they had some serious quality control issues. I'm curious to see how they're doing in 2026. So let's check this thing out. With a wingspan of 59 inches and a ready-to-fly weight of around 7 pounds, the Hawkeye is a decent-sized model. It's going to be right at home at an organized RC flying club. If you're a park flyer, you're going to need a decent amount of space. And as always, make sure that you're aware of the laws governing flying models where you live. Dynam sells this airplane more ways than you can shake a stick at. They have plug and play, bind and fly, a multitude of ready-to-fly versions in different modes. I don't really know anything about their radios or their radio protocol, so I can't really speak to that, but suffice to say there are a lot of options. This one is a plug and play that is on loan to us from our friend Ramel. Gave it to us new in the box so we could bring it to you. So Ramel, thanks very much, buddy. When it comes to being a plug and play, what that means is most of the electronics are pre-installed for you. All the servos, the ESCs, the motors, the retractable gear, it's all in there ready to go for you. You just need to source a receiver, and if you're going to use some sort of gyro stabilizer, you need to source that if it's not incorporated in the receiver, and install those things yourselves. It is a 6-channel airplane out of the box. You have elevator, twin rudders with a steerable nose wheel, ailerons, flaps, retractable gear, and of course, throttle control. The Hawkeye has quite a bit of scale detail. The mold is reasonably well done. You have a lot of panel line and rivet detail molded in. The radar dome is a nice touch. When you plug the model up, it will start turning and continues to turn until you unplug the model. You have LED wingtip lights and a couple of strobes, one underneath the fuse and one back at the tail. The flaps are nice. They are separated between inner and outer wing panels. And the landing gear is reasonably well done. You have spring-loaded aluminum struts. They engage a stiff spring when you retract them and shut the gear doors for you. This model has plastic in strategic places where it has to have plastic where things mount. The gear doors are plastic. The entire radar dome mount is plastic. Interestingly, things like the nose cone and the cowlings, though, they're still foam. When it comes to the hinges, you've got foam hinges on the elevators and the rudders, and the ailerons and flaps are pin hinge reinforced with foam hinges. When it comes to the push rods, you have Z-bends on one end and ball links on the other. It is a convenient top loader. You got a little spring-loaded pin here. Have to be kind of careful. Your tongue and groove is a piece of plywood. There's plenty of room in that battery bay for the recommended size packs. When it comes to the model assembly, the manual is written in several different languages, but there's a minimal amount of information. In my opinion, more than enough for somebody that has modeling experience and already knows what they're doing, but nowhere near enough for someone that doesn't. If you'd like to see a full assembly video, Dynam makes one of those. We'll link that in the description. In the Quick Look demo series, we don't cover the full assembly, but if we run into something that we feel like that you need to know, we definitely mention it. With this one, we ran into several. So the first thing we ran into when it comes to installing the outer verticals to the horizontal assembly, the ones with the rudders on them, the hardware to do that was not included. You'll need 4 self-tapping screws, and they were nowhere to be found. Thankfully, I have a lot of spare screws on hand, and I was able to find 4 that would work perfectly, so I was able to get those on there. And then when it came to installing the horizontal assembly onto the back of the fuselage, you'll use 3 long machine screws that screw into either nuts or blind nuts that are in the fuselage. 2 of those sets of threads were gummed up with either foam or glue residue. You could not get the screws to start and actually engage. So I had to re-tap those, two of those, to clean out the threads to be able to get the horizontal on the airplane. If you follow the instructions, they'll tell you that you want to mount the radar dome onto the mount and then put that mount, that completed assembly, onto the fuselage. Well, I don't recommend doing that, because if you try to do that, you can't get a screwdriver to fit underneath the dome to put the mount on the fuse. So I would install the mount first, then put the radar dome on the mount itself. And to install the radar dome on the mount, you'll be putting it on this aluminum piece that attaches to the shaft of the motor that turns the radar dome. When I went to put that aluminum piece on the shaft of the motor and lock it down with the grub screw that locks it into place, you'll use grub screws on either side so that it doesn't wobble. There were burrs inside that hole, and it wouldn't go down on the motor shaft, so I had to take a round file and clean that up to get that to fit. And finally, when it comes to putting the outer wing panels on, that is essentially field assembly, so that's intended to be very easy. There's a single electronic connection, it's loose wire, and then two screws from underneath. The panels fit just fine, the screws work fine, but the electronic connection is rather stiff wire. It's not more expensive, flexible silicone wire. So getting that wire to actually go in the recesses and get out of the way so that you can actually put the wing panel into place is very difficult to do. You have to, it's tedious not to pinch any of those wires. It takes a lot longer than something that's supposed to be so simple should. So definitely some modeling skill required to get the Hawkeye together, or at least to get this particular one together for sure. When it comes to the model setup, the manual provides a bit of information, but I pretty much just ignored that and did my own thing with the Hawkeye. Our friend Ramel that owns the airplane flies Spectrum, we do too. He gave us an AR8360T plus 8-channel receiver. I installed it right here inside the hatch on the right side of the fuse where you see it. And I do have AS3X Plus tuned specifically for the Hawkeye. When it comes to the push rods, they are all actually pre-installed from the factory, so you don't have to do that. I made no mechanical adjustments to any of those. You do want to make sure that your control surfaces are centered once you get the airplane bound and powered up. And you want to make sure that the dual elevator servos are bringing those elevators up and down at the same rate to the same place. Mechanically adjust those with the ball links if they're not. When it comes to the balance point that you're going to see here in a bit, this is our battery position right at the end of the wooden battery tray. You'll notice that we have the battery lead strapped down. That is to keep it out of the way of the nose wheel retract. We flew the airplane on Spectrum 3200 and SMC 3400 4S packs. There's a little bit of difference in the weight of those, but they didn't change the balance of the airplane much at all, if any, and I didn't change the battery position with either one of them. They're both in the same place regardless of the battery that I'm using. So coming up next is going to be our full setup page, all the information that you need, including our AS3X Plus settings. If you fly Spectrum, will be there. You can pause that and check it out if you'd like. The Hawkeye is a solid flying model. We did the entire first flight without any stabilization. I got the airplane tuned, checked the balance, set up the flaps, did a few touch and goes and a couple of stall tests, and it did fine. Second flight, we brought AS3X Plus into play and got it tuned to the Hawkeye, and it did exactly what you would think it would do. It made everything that's good about the Hawkeye even better, and then some. Much better flying model with it than without it, but if you just don't like using gyros, you can absolutely fly this airplane successfully without one, and it's a pretty good experience. When it comes to aerobatics, I will say this. The model has the chops for it. I do some basic aerobatics in the demo that you'll see, but I don't know if a steady diet of that is a great idea for a couple of reasons. The first being the outer wing panels where they attach. There's a permanent carbon tube for a spar coming out of the fuse, essentially, that goes into that wing panel. It's only about 4 inches long. so there's not a long tube, super hard pulls. You can make that flex a good bit. The other thing is I'm barely touching this, and you can see how much the radar dome can move. The motor that turns that while you're flying, you can hear and see that strain just moving the airplane around on the ground a good bit. So if you're really putting G's on it, I don't know how long that motor will last. Interestingly enough, and bear in mind when I was doing aerobatics, I did have AS3X Plus working for me. Since this can clearly move in flight, you would think it would make the airplane do funky aerodynamic stuff. I didn't feel anything, even doing aerobatics. It just felt normal, if you will. When it comes to skill level, this is clearly not a beginner's airplane. I don't even think it's a good second airplane. I think it's probably a good third or fourth airplane. I would say this is an intermediate skill level airplane. It requires coordinating turns and knowing how to use that rudder and knowing how to do a stabilized approach with the gear and the flaps down and utilize throttle to land the airplane. It isn't difficult to do, mind you, but it's going to be something that somebody coming right off a trainer, it's going to be a skill set that they don't have. So intermediate skill set, good third or fourth airplane, depending on who the person is. So the big question is, how is Dynam doing in 2026 compared to the way they were doing 12 years ago or so when I messed with Dynam airplanes last? Well, you have to understand what they were doing back then first. Back then, the electronics were super sketchy. I never had a Dynam airplane where I didn't have to replace something, ESC, servos, retracts. There were other parts of airframe. I did all kinds of modifications on my Dynam Tiger Moth to make it a solid model that wouldn't warp and that would fly well and land well. The foam back then was lighter than this. This is heavier foam than they used to use, a heavier model than most Dynams, but that's because it's a denser foam. Denser foam looks better. The mold is much, much better now than then. It looked almost back then like the bottom side of a lot of Dynam airplanes were just an afterthought. There were all kinds of molding marks, and you could just tell they didn't care because the top side was the only one that they paid attention to, and even that wasn't amazing. But they did fly really well. They were light and they flew well, even if you had to replace a lot of things, and they were very inexpensive. So if you did have to replace electronics, you'd end up with about as much as you had in an E-flat airplane, and it would finally work the way an E-flat airplane did, but you had to do some work to get it there. Well, with this one, obviously, I've already spoke about the mold and the foam, much better than Dynam used to be. All the electronics worked on this the entire time that we used it. The motors ran better. They still make a little bit of it's an interesting sound, but the ESC and motor combination runs so much smoother than they used to years ago. Again, the retracts worked, but when I'm comparing this airplane in 2026 to the way Dynam used to do things, and I tell you that they've improved, I also have to compare them to what everybody else is doing, because while Dynam has improved, everybody else has improved. And the only reason I'm comparing them to anybody else is because I saw the price for this thing. I didn't pay for this. My buddy Ramel let us use it. He paid for it, $429. That is as much as a new plug-and-play that uses a 4S3200 and is a twin is from one of the big three, the big three being E-flite, Free Wing, and FMS. We know what we're going to get from them. You're going to get really good quality foam, a solid mold that doesn't have a lot of blemishes and is very refined. You're going to get electronics that are solid and proven and work really, really well. The assembly is going to be super easy, especially in 2026. And it's a no headache experience. Well, I told you what happened with the assembly of this airplane. And to be fair, a couple of those things may be just this model. But where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's other things with the model. There's a lot of blemishes on this radar dome. Some of that could be something they didn't catch at the factory. Some of it could be stuff that happened in shipping. There's a blemish right here that you can plainly see on the hatch. There are other little flashing points and parts on the foam where the fit and the finish is just haphazard. It's not as good as quality in 2026 with an E-flite free wing or FMS plane. The assembly surely doesn't go as quick. The airplane flies as good as those airplanes, so that is good. But the fact of the matter is there was a very big gap between Dynam and everyone else 12 years ago. They have closed the distance in 2026, but there is still a gap. I don't see how this airplane at $429 should be $429 when you can get the plug-and-play E-flite D18, the only new twin that takes a 4S3200 that I could find in this size range, for $399. That is a better model all the way around. The mold's better, the foam is better, the fit and finish is better, the assembly is much easier, and the airplane flies as good as this does. So yeah, $429, Dynam's making a statement and saying, hey, our stuff is as good as everybody else's. But it isn't. Not yet. So the big question is, would I pay $429 for this airplane? And the answer is yes, because Dynam has one other ace in their hole, and that is they make airplanes that nobody else makes. Things like P-61 Black Widows, B-26 Marauders, this Hawkeye. If this is an airplane that you want in your hangar, like my buddy Ramel, you can't get it anywhere else. It's a good enough model, even though I got to do some work to it, that it is certainly worth owning, and I'd pay that to have something unique that I can't get anywhere else. So that is pretty much what I can say about Dynam and about this model. They have come a long way. They've improved greatly, but there's still a gap between them and the very best companies that make foam airplanes in the business right now. They've got some work to do. So with that, we're going to go right to the demo flying. Enjoy that demo flying. If you decide you'd like to put one of these in your hangar, we'll put a link in the description where you can do that. Enjoy the flying. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you next week with something cool with wings. It's always nice when you can fly a warbird that has tricycle gear, and the Hawkeye has a pretty tight turning radius, so you don't need a super wide runway to get it turned around. The gear worked very well and retracted and extended consistently. I did have one main get caught in the gear doors one time, but a quick recycle and it fixed it. The Hawkeye is nicely powered. It's not what I would call overpowered to be sure, but there's plenty of power for what it is. I don't think the intention with this one was to be a big time aerobat anyway. This one really likes coordinated turns, and the rudders, while effective, are not as powerful as you would think. It took more rudder deflection in the turns than I thought it would. The Hawkeye's got a nice roll rate. I was actually holding back a bit there. Just doing some very basic aerobatics. I'm going to give inverted a try here. It did all right. We'll get it a bit lower in the bonus footage. The flaps are very effective. You can get the airplane a good bit slower using those rather than trying to land it clean. You definitely have to incorporate a stabilized approach and use some power bringing this airplane in for landing. It's not a power-off lander. All in all, it's a very pleasant experience to fly. Solid model. We forgot to mention this, so we wanted to start the bonus footage off by showing it. I was able to land the plane safely, and then we tell you about it. So the front cowlings are, these are just on with magnets. This one came loose and hit the prop, and the prop boogered that up. So I guess we'll tape that down. We definitely wanted you to know about that. This is a quick takeoff. So if you want to get off the ground quickly, it will absolutely do it. We're going to go right into a dirty stall test, full flaps, gear down. And you can see it drops that left wing pretty hard with a very easy recovery. We're going to clean the airplane up, gear and flaps up, and do it clean. Does the same thing. Definitely not an airplane you want to stall low to the ground. Now we're going to do a little better inverted pass, get it a bit lower, and then we'll actually push it over the top. Now we're going to do a little snap roll-ish looking thing, kinda. And of course we got to do the mandatory 4-point roll for our buddy Mike. Now I'm going to get her turned around here. You can lose a lot of altitude quickly with the gear and flaps down dirty. This thing will come on down. We'll bring her in for a landing. This is a very unique model. Had a really good time flying it. We'll see you on the next one.